Welcome back to Umbraco Community Day.
Welcome
and
back.
We now have our next session, which is Simplifying Accessibility with Mike Masey. And I think we have Mike on the line. Hey, Mike.
Hello.
I'm here. Hello.
Hello. Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Yourselves?
Yeah, good. Hanging in there. Thank you. Lovely to see you. I mentioned just now you did this talk at UK Festival. I got a really good glimpse of it. I was dealing with some other things in the background of the same room, but it was a highlight of a lot of people's days, is my understanding. So I'm really looking forward to this. Maybe you want to just quickly introduce yourself, and then we can dive right in.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mike Masey. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an Umbraco MVP. I've been in the community for a fair number of years now, I guess. I'm in the Umbraco accessibility team, full stack developer, and I like doing stuff, I guess. I'm excited to do this talk.
Amazing. Like doing stuff. Well, let's let you do your stuff, Mike, and just dive straight in.
Well, thank you very much. Cheers. Right. So there we go. There's my slides. Right. So once again, thank you all for joining me today on the Umbraco Community Day. We're going to be talking about simplifying accessibility and some practical solutions for the 6 most common issues. As Callum mentioned previously, this talk does include some thanks. This talk began with a talk by Danny Lancaster and Moni Barnes, which was about Fixer 6, which was about highlighting and identifying the 6 most common accessibility issues found in the top 1 million homepages across the web. This talk was based on a study done by WebAIM. They do this every year, and they will do an audit of the top 1 million homepages and see where they lie in terms of accessibility issues. One thing to note, if you have any, if you want to learn more about some of these links, I have QR codes in the top of my slides that you can scan, or if you want slides later, you can grab the links that way as well. So WebAIM is where this study came from, and it discovered that 96.3% of homepages had detectable WCAG2 failures, which is a pretty high number for 1 million of the top homepages. If you're not sure what WCAG is, that stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. If you want to learn a bit more about web accessibility, this is a fantastic resource for learning more. There's a lot of really valuable information about the guidelines themselves. But on top of this, there's a really useful resource to help encourage your businesses and your clients to take accessibility seriously. And this isn't just about, the heart and mind. We want to make sure that the web is accessible to everyone, because it should be. Obviously, that can sometimes be a bit tricky for companies that have budgets and so on. So in this business case, it also includes a financial incentive to take accessibility seriously. Now, if you're not sure what that is, it's £11.75 billion per year. So the purple pounds, they essentially do a study into the spending power of disabled online shoppers, and that's how much they have discovered is lost due to inaccessible websites per year. So if you don't think it's, these few little issues are that important, one, they're not too hard to fix. Accessibility can be difficult if you're doing it last. If you're thinking about it in advance and trying to think of it from a more holistic perspective, it can bring your businesses and your clients more money, which is great. So how do you find these accessibility issues to begin with? What I've done for this talk is I've created a little dummy site, a little example site. Now, obviously, I've added these accessibility issues, but a lot of these are based on issues that I found personally and have fixed myself, or in the some of the examples found on the study. And this is an example of a rough homepage. I imagine this is a homepage scrolled down, so this is a bit of a linking to the listing page. You might have a hero banner or something at the top, but this is going to be my Huskey homepage. And for any of you who are wondering, that is my dog. So we have a website, and we're going to use some tools. So we have Accessibility Insights, Web, Google Lighthouse, IBM Equal Access Accessibility Checker, the Wave Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, and the Axe Dev Tools. A lot of, I think, Accessibility Insights and Google Lighthouse, they use Axe under the hood. And I've not used IBM Equal Access Accessibility Checker myself, but I have had a little investigation, and it's a plethora of different tools that can be used to help check things. Now, the great thing with these tools is they will automate some of it, but it's worth noting now that you can only automate a fairly small percentage of accessibility issues, say 20 to 40%, depending on your site. So you do need to take some manual action in your testing. And these tools will actually help you to guide you through what manual processes you need to do to test. In addition to that, part of those manual tests may include using a screen reader. Some screen readers are expensive, some are free. So NVDA Access is the open source screen reader. I've used that in this talk to help demonstrate some of the issues and how they can be fixed and the differences before and after some of these problems are fixed. So if you've ever wondered what a screen reader sounds like and how it works, highly recommend going and downloading it yourself and have a little play around with it. Also worth noting, I am not a native screen reader. I don't use these day to day. I understand them a little bit, but I will never be able to use them the same efficiency as someone who uses them natively. But it's still informative and useful to know. Finally, we have an accessibility reporter that can be built into Umbraco itself. So Matt Beegent releases package this year, and it's a automated accessibility reporter built into Umbraco, and it includes some automated tests and some guides like the other tests. I think it's got Axe under the hood as well for your Umbraco website. So if you want to contribute it, there's GitHub. If you want to find out more about the package itself, there's a website and the marketplace as well for you. And this is a little bit of what it looks like in the back office. So it can scan the entire website, and it can also scan page by page basis and give you information. And you can configure this as well based on, the level of accessibility you want to be auditing for. So yeah, these are some really useful tools that I highly recommend checking out. So back to this site, we've had a little look. We've used a accessibility checking tool to help identify these issues. And this is where I want to have a little bit of audience participation. So I do have the chat open to the side of me. I don't know how synced up it will be. So we'll play around with this. If anyone can just nod or press something to say hi, I might be able to see if you're in there. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with some questions, I guess, and I'd like to see if you can tell me what the issues might be. So what are the problems? Okay. So this is a very, very simple thing to fix most of the time. And it starts with this bit of code. It's very stripped back. Can anyone in the chat tell me what the problem here might be? I'm going to give you about 15 seconds. Let's see. I think there is a bit of a delay, so I'm not going to be able to do that. But the issue here is missing document language. Now, this might seem fairly trivial, but some screen readers will have an option to set dialect, for example. Now, if you don't have your document language configured, and say if you're in Germany and you have your screen reader configured to a German accent, as an example, and you go onto a site that is in English, some screen readers, depending on how you have them configured, might try to read that site in English with a German accent, which could actually make it harder for a non-native English speaker to understand what's being said. There are other things as well. So some cookie pop-ups that you can add to your sites, they will use that lang text to determine what language should be used for your pop-up. So if you don't have that configured, sometimes those additional bands that you're using that are sometimes required by EU law, which I'm sure some of you have to adhere to here, if you're not given the right language, how are you going to correctly agree or disagree to your cookies? So fairly simple to fix. You add your lang attribute in, and again, these are this is just top of the 6 accessibility issues. So number 1, lang. Next up, it's funny, I'm now seeing a bunch of stuff coming into the chat, but it's very, very late. This one, again, fairly simple. I don't know, depending on how your screen is configured at home, this may be more obvious or less obvious, but the problem here is low contrast text. Now, this is less of a, I guess, core development fix. There's not really any code examples to how to fix this problem, simply because a lot of these issues can be solved at a design stage. And if there are any designers here or UX experts, or even agency managers, if you're a developer, try to have that collaboration between your designers, that friendly collaboration, just to inform them. Try and provide them with information around this contrast information. If designers use things like Figma, there are packages and plugins you can add to these tools that will highlight accessibility issues as the design's being done. And if as a designer if you're lucky enough to get to review designs before they go off to clients and get design signed off, try and pick up on these things ahead of time. Chrome DevTools, for example, will also have a little built-in accessibility checker. The WebAIM website also has a contrast checker on the website in there as well. So it's fairly simple to fix sometimes. The difficult thing here can be with images. So whilst you can automate some of this stuff, having to manually check things can also be useful as well. So next up, this is probably one of the things I see a lot of, I pick up on a lot of, probably because I care about it a lot. I don't know if anyone knows what this might be. Or this, this feels like it's a little bit more useful. Assets/img 214232.png. So it's probably an image, right? But we don't know what the image is, and we don't know what it's used for. What? It's how a lot of people are going to end up feeling with these if you're relying on screen readers. So yeah, missing or poor alternative text images is another very common. It's one of those top 6 accessibility issues that are found. So how do we fix this? I'm going to show you a few examples. Again, my trusty steed, my dog Namira, here will be helping us to make our images a bit more accessible. So the worst thing we can do is not include any alt tag at all. If you don't include an alt tag, even if it's empty, it will just read out the source tag. So in this context, it will read screen reader or assistive technology will read dog.jpg. This is also a SEO thing as well. So if you don't have that from an SEO perspective, you can get hit there too. So another bad thing to do is just repeat what's used for the source. Again, doesn't tell us what the image is. We can get a little bit better by just being, there's a husky, there's a dog, but we can be descriptive with our alt text. So we can start adding to it, there's a husky looking up. And we can keep going. We can make it even better. She's a fluffy husky with blue eyes surrounded by snow, looking up expectantly at a treat that I was holding up to try and get the photo. What I'm trying to get at here is with your images, you can be descriptive and you want to be descriptive and succinct with your images. But the important thing to note with images themselves, and this is the reason why it's been quite difficult trying to get the concept of an alt tag into Umbraco, for example, is the context by which an image is used can often determine what the alt text should be. So, for example, if you have an image in a bunch of listing that's like a gallery, you want to describe your images. But if it's purely decorative, you don't necessarily want to describe them. You kind of can ignore them, depending on where they use. This image might have a different alt text if it's used somewhere else. The other thing is, if you don't want to include any alt text, the best thing to do is just include an empty alt tag itself. So this will just, from assistive technology perspective, it will just be ignored. You don't need to add any ARIA tags, just an empty alt tag, that will fix it. Another thing to note, I've noticed recently there are certain front-end tools. I can't tell you exactly what they are, but if you have some form of bundling or something that will generate your HTML, check what is spat out, because I've noticed some, for some unknown reason, will just strip out the alt tag entirely if it's seen as an empty value. I think it's trying to be helpful, but it's not. So just something to be aware of. Right, next up. This is something we see a lot of. These are social media links. Are they? I think. I don't know. It's hard to tell. What about this? I don't know. I'm reading more. Don't know what I'm reading more of. And the problem with this, if you've got a list of those, is it turns into this. Read more, read more, read more, read more, read more. To highlight the problem of empty links or ambiguous link text, I just want to go back to my website again. So this is that page we had, right? We've got some cards that will link through to our latest news. And what I've done is I've set up so the read more links are the links. But when we're using something like NVDA, we can do something to bring up an elements list, and this will give us a quick overview of, how the website's built, what links are available. But the way that these cards were built originally is really unhelpful. So, we have those simplifying accessibility, broken fix, we have those top level links. But after that, I don't know where they're going. I don't know what they're doing. It's not useful, right? So how can we fix it? Let's get in some code. This is what they look like before. This is what that code looks like at the moment. So we've got our list element, which is a card. We have, to begin with, we wanted to make that image clickable as well. So it's just been wrapped in a link. We've kept that alt text. We didn't know what to put in it as well. So we just put this post thumbnail. Maybe that's sort of just been forgotten to be updated, or maybe it's just been left. Who knows? We've then added our link down here that links to the article, and we just put read more because, that's what it looks like in the design. But we can fix it without breaking the design. So what I've done here is I've wrapped the article, wrapped the block in an article item. I've removed the link around the image itself, and I've removed the alt text because for my site, the way I want this is that image is purely decorative. So for my context, I want that to be ignored. So we're removing that. And what we'll do is we'll still make it possible to click on the image or the whole card by adding some CSS stuff to make that link cover the whole card. In addition, we've moved the actual link itself inside the header tag, the H2. So now we've got the header link, header title, the article title as the link text. So now we have much more context around what that link is doing. Because we don't want to break the design as well, because from a UX perspective, sometimes that read more can be useful, sometimes not, but in this context, I wanted to keep it in there. I've left it in there, but I've added that area hidden true, so it's just ignored. It's not important text, it's purely decorative, but from a visual perspective, it's there. So before, we had our cards, and after, we have our cards. There's no change. The only change you'll probably have seen is I also identified some contrast issues with that text. So I've just made them darker, made them accessible. All changes, but they make a world of difference because now this is what that elements list looks like. We've gotten rid of those duplicate links. Each of those links now have a much clearer, I know exactly where they are going to. I know that getting started with traveling ultralight, that's going to be informative. It's telling me what it's going to. So those changes to things like cards can be really. As I mentioned before, I wanted to make the whole link clickable as well and keep those hover states more focused. So this is a little bit of CSS. You can use things like the has selector. So where that anchor tag is now buried within that card, we can use that has selector to go at the top level around the whole card itself and say, right, let's look in. Does this article item have an anchor that is currently hovered? If it does, we're going to do something with the image. And I've also done it with the focus as well. Obviously, with your focus states, you want to make sure they are different to your hover states. So hover and focus should be different. And because I haven't removed the browser defaults, you can see in that little GIF to the side that when I'm focusing, it's still highlighting the link itself. If you want to learn more, and I forgot to put a QR code for this, there's a fantastic article by Hayden Pickering in his inclusive, not Hayden Pickering, I can't remember who it was by called Inclusive Component Designs. That link will give you a really, really good rundown of how to make things like cards far more accessible and also, fix that. So on to the next one, search. This is a form. A lot of websites have site searches, and we find, especially in sort of the corporate side. Now, what's the problem with this? There's a lot of problems with this, actually. Our screen reader, for example, when it goes to read through the form fields, it just says search. The button is unlabeled. There's no landmark. We're not really aware of it. It doesn't give us information. So that form field, for example, if you focused onto it, it would just say search, edit, unlabeled button. So we don't know what the function of that form is. And this is a stripped down version of what one of these sort of site search forms looks like. And fundamentally, this is how a lot of them can look. There's usually, might be a little bit more around it, but there are some core issues with this. One being, we've got just an input, we've got a placeholder that says search ... A placeholder is a placeholder, it's not a label, right? It's an important distinction. You shouldn't use your placeholders to tell you what the input should do, because as soon as you start typing into an input, you lose your placeholder. And accessibility isn't just about people who require screen readers or people with color blindness. If you have cognitive impairment, you might need that reminder to tell you what you're searching. So that doesn't help. So we're also missing a form input label. The button as well, similar to that link issue we've got no text in our button, empty buttons. So those two things sort of add more to that top 6 accessibility issues: no form labels and empty buttons. Another area where empty buttons are often seen is things like carousel paginations, where you have little arrows left and right, not necessarily useful, or pagination in general for page pagination. If you've got numbered pagination, then arrows going left and right, often we'll see that those arrows are just empty buttons. Again, seems fairly obvious, but they can be missed, but they're luckily fairly easy to fix. So NVDA, as I mentioned before, will read out that form as search, edit button, clickable, not useful. So let's add a little bit more to fix this. So this is the fixed form. We've added a label telling you what the input's doing. It's searching the website here. I've added this SR only class. Now, the difference between this and using something like display none will completely hide an element from the DOM and the accessibility DOM. So when things like screen reader will read your page, if it sees something with display none, it will ignore it entirely. We don't want that. So SR only will help to keep information that's relevant available, but it will hide it visually from the user. We've also updated the placeholder to tell you what that input's for. It's for search terms. We've changed the type to search. This isn't a required accessibility thing, but it's a little nice touch you can do. This is effectively the same as type equals text. The difference is if you're on mobile or on device and you hit a input that has search, it will change the UI ever so slightly to make it maybe a little bit more clear as to what the role of that is. So if you have a type password, it will change slightly. If you have type search, it might change that bottom sort of go button to search. In addition, I've added some button text. Also made it screen reader only because we don't necessarily want to change the layout, but we still want to keep it accessible. That button is submitting the search. Finally, we've added a role. This helps to give a landmark for what that search is. So the before and after, this is what our form site search looked before. This is what it looks like after. Again, very, very small change, but it's actually fixed a lot of the accessibility issues we've got. So NVDA will now read search landmark, search this site, edit, search, enter search, button, search terms. So this may seem a bit alien, but that's far more clear as to what that form should do. If you want a very informative and entertaining video around, what has actually happened to text inputs, because we've seen a lot of various UX changes and design changes happen to images over the years. There's a fantastic video by Hayden Pickering. He's got a whole series called Web Briefs that highlights a lot of accessibility issues. Highly recommend watching because they're fantastic and really, really good learning resource. So if we go back to our elements list with NVDA, we can see our form fields are now much more useful. Search words like here, yada, yada, yada. The button is now labeled, search, and we have a landmark now. So if we wanted to, quickly scan the main landmarks of the site, we now know there's a search. So to recap, this is where I'm going to go into my generation game mode in a moment. We had a poor accessible site with a homepage, or maybe we didn't know it was accessible. Maybe we thought it was completely fine, but then we decided to check it just in case. We've used a number of these accessibility tools, or maybe we used one. Doesn't matter. We've used some to help guide us with our accessibility journey. We've maybe installed NVDA or another screen reader to test it ourselves to see how the website's behaving for screen readers. We may have even installed the Umbraco accessibility reporter onto our website. And we've discovered that our site had low contrast text, missing or poor alternative text for images, empty links or ambiguous link text, missing form input labels, a cuddly toy, empty buttons, missing document language. And we've identified those issues. We've gone through, we've updated our code, we've fixed some of these design issues, and we've gone from an inaccessible site to an accessible site without having to make too much of a drastic change. Now, I appreciate this is quite a simple design site, but there's this, I guess, from what I feel like a misinformed idea that an accessible website has to be plain and boring. I don't think that's the case. You can still have these beautiful, well-designed, really inspiring websites and keep them accessible. It just needs a little bit of learning, a little bit of know-how. So if anyone wants to take a screenshot of those 6 top issues, here they are. Keep an eye out for them, because fixing these 6, as Danny and Molly said in their talk, fixing these would make a huge difference to how people are able to access your websites. Thank you very much, and I think that's me done. If anyone has any questions, you can find me in the chat, I'm sure. Cool. Cheers. I'll be honest, I'm not really sure what to do now.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mike. Yeah, I think that's a great talk, and I think this is going to be immortalized on YouTube as like one of the reference sessions for sure.
I had a good chat with some people at the Umbraco Community Teams retreat back in September, where I said, and maybe controversial here, but I'm going to say it on a big platform here anyway. Why not? I said that I put the accessibility talks and the sustainability talks I've seen in the same seat, as both being a little bit preachy and showing us the importance, but not actually showing us the how and the practical ways to do stuff. This session absolutely flips that on its head. It's great to see there's so many relatively easy things we can do to make these problems go away. So that's great, really eye-opening. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, well, I'm glad you like it. Again, the key thing for me is making sure it's simple, right? It's and I know accessibility isn't always simple. It can be very difficult, it can take a lot of work, but it's like everything. If you do a little bit and make it a little bit better than it was the day before, the world will be a better place, right? So you don't have to fix everything all at once. It's like the accessibility team with Umbraco. We haven't fixed every accessibility issue with Umbraco. Probably never will, right? Because it's a constantly moving thing. The goal is just to try and make it a little bit better, and that's the best we can do, right?
Yeah, and raise some awareness by this talk being here today is obviously a fantastic way to help out the well, we've had I think over 700 unique or 700 views so far today, so those people will hopefully all see this talk and feel equally inspired and go away and fix things. So thank you so much, Mike.
Absolutely.
Watching Rachel's talk again, I caught it at the UK Fest, and it was really, really inspiring. If anyone's feeling in a rut, stay around, because
you're spoiling
fantastic.
what's next, Mike.
I know you've
Sorry.
taken away my words for me. But it's fine. I'll just redo the same thing.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you again, Mike. We'll catch you soon.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
That was Mike. And before the next speaker comes in and continues with her talk, can we have a break?
Yeah.
And we'll join back soon. Don't go anywhere. Be here.